Hello everyone. Today we'll be covering an extremely important concept in deck building. This is something that I'm confident that players of all skill levels can learn from. Now while this video is mostly focused on deck building, there are also some topics in here which can help you become a better pilot. I'm going to put some links in the description below with timestamps so you can skip forward and backward in between sections of the video. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Today, I'm joined by the mastermind behind the whole Rule of 16, Condor from Team Creve. How are you today, Condor?
Really good. How about you?
Doing great, thanks. So, I guess we should get started by really talking about what exactly is the Rule of 16, what's the definition, what's the rationale behind it. So, could you walk us through that, Condor?
Yeah, it took me a long time to try to put it into words that are easy to understand, but I think what we have here is perfect. The Rule of 16 is a deck building principle that asserts that one allocates all excess provisions to the tutors, cards played, and summons in a standard 16 turn game. In the vast majority of our games, one will play 16 turns, since the objective is to generate the most points in those 16 turns. All excess provisions should be allocated to the cards played in those 16 turns.
I'd just like to add, in case you're wondering where are we getting the number 16 from, the number 16 is the number of turns that we play per game because we start round 1 with a 10 card hand and we draw 3 cards going into round 2 and then we draw 3 more cards going into round 3. So 10 plus 3 plus 3 yields a 16 turn game. First thing we have here to talk about is the terminology that we'll be using in this video, so everyone's on the same page. For the purposes of the Rule of 16 exercise, we have our cards divided into 4 categories, and those categories are color-coded here to kind of help you understand them. So starting at the top, we've got our 4 Ps, which are just cards played from hand that cost the minimal 4 provisions. We have tutors, which are cards that play other cards from the deck. We have summons, which are cards that are summoned from the deck after meeting certain conditions. And finally, we have target cards. Target card is a non-tutor, non-summon card with provisions invested beyond 4 that is played from hand. The deck should not have more than 16 target cards. So here we have a category breakdown of the invested provisions. When we say invested provisions, we're talking about the provisions used to upgrade your cards beyond the baseline of 4P. So Condor, what exactly do we have going on here?
So we're breaking down your Deadeye Ambush list from last season that you got to 2600. And we look at the optimal game plan, and you can see those highlighted in green here. And if you break them down by the categories, we have 1 tutor, 16 target cards played, and 3 cards summoned. So the Rule of 16 doesn't mean we play exactly 16 cards, but we play cards like tutors that play other cards. And you can see here that visually, that altogether there are 20 cards that are going to be seen in a 16 card game, optimally.
Right. So there would be 16 turns, and for instance, we would play our 1 tutor, Oneiromancy, and then that would pull preferably one of our 16 target cards, and then the summons would just come out on their own, right?
Yeah, so for example, Nilfgaardian Justice will bring out your Mahakam Volunteers, and your Elorant will pop out of your deck when you meet the condition of 5 L's on your board.
All right, and I just want to point out that the 4 Ps are not in this table in front of us. You can see them on the bottom left in the Deadeye Ambush list, but really what we're focusing here, pretty much the breakdown of, again, the provisions that you've invested. We're not really looking at a 4P because the 4Ps are the baseline. That's the lowest you can go. We just want to make sure we're keeping track of the provisions that we are using to upgrade our cards. They're actually spending provisions to upgrade beyond that baseline. So there's actually a cost that comes with violating the Rule of 16. And we have a little example set up here in the Matic Deck Tech. The Matic Deck Tech is a deck that was recently introduced on the Gwent website, and it violates the rule of 16 in a pretty serious way. The deck has one tutor in Geralt Quen, one summon in Matic, and 23 target cards. 23. The rule of 16 says we should only have 16 target cards, so this is going way higher than we ever should when building a deck. What this basically boils down to is that in a best case scenario, you're going to miss 7 provisions every game. Just to put that into perspective for you, 7 provisions could upgrade a 4P card to an 11P, or a 5P card to a 12P. That's just 3 provisions that we're passing up every game. We've already lost those provisions just based off of what we've come up with in the deck builder with this. So let's go ahead and see if we can optimize it to abide by the rule of 16. Now, I'm going to pass it back to Condor in a second. I just want to point out that we have a side-by-side comparison here. On the left is the original Matic Deck Tech from the Gwent website. On the right is just our example of a way to optimize the deck to abide by the rule of 16. We have some color-coded boxes here, and we have a couple of card changes between the two decks. Condor, do you want to go into a little bit more detail about what exactly is happening here?
So what we did was we made an optimization, and in green you'll see the cards that both decks have. So we try to do our best to make it side by side. So both decks have 15 targeted cards that are exactly the same. However, the deck on the left will play one of their 8 cards in orange, right? One of their 8 cards. They can have their choice of cards, but the deck on the right allows us to play a card such as Portal, which will bring out your Bear Witcher items. So we're talking a lot more points.
Right, and I think anyone can really appreciate the difference it would make to play a card like Portal, which pulls 2 Bear Witcher Adepts for a 14-point play, and 2 Thinning, instead of, for example, a Dancing Star or an Armor Up. I mean, the difference is astounding. And again, just by optimizing our top 16 target cards, we've pretty much produced a Portal for a 14-point play practically out of thin air, just by optimizing in the deck builder. Now, there is something that the rule of 16 kind of brings to our attention in terms of the opportunity cost of playing too many 4P cards. And this is actually kind of interesting because when you really start thinking about your deck building in terms of 16 played cards per game, you realize that you start to lose something by playing too many 4Ps. Pretty much every deck has a limit to the number of 4Ps and the number of target cards it can play. Once you start playing too many 4Ps, it becomes impossible to play all of a deck's target cards. So a good rule of thumb is that 4Ps played plus the target cards played must always be less than or equal to 16, and it's up to the player to be aware of this. You will have some number of flex 4Ps based off of the number of target cards you have, and they're basically your budget for 4Ps each game. For example, the deck on the right having exactly 16 target cards means that each 4P you play comes with an opportunity cost of one of your target cards. If you were to play one Pyrotechnician, you're going to have to skip out on one of the cards in green, one of our green target cards. If you were to play Pyrotechnician and Squirrel, then you're missing out on 2. And it's pretty much up to you to decide, will my situational 4Ps be better than my green 5 and above provision target cards? Now, this sort of leads us into the topic of 4 provision card flexibility. Condor, do you want to break that down for us?
Sure. We included this deck, which is something that I ran last season, to emphasize that the rule of 16 does not require you to have 16 target cards. And in fact, it's ideal to have less than 14 target cards, or less than 16 target cards, sorry, because that gives us the opportunity to have flexible 4 provision cards. So you can see here that my list had 2 tutors, 14 target cards, and 4 cards that are summoned. Because I only have 14 target cards, that means I can play 2 cards inside the blue box and flex those. Because of the fact that I only have, 14 target cards, I can play any of these 2 4 provision cards based on the matchup or the situation without sacrificing the opportunity to play all the deck's target cards.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite useful. Basically, what it boils down to is there's no opportunity cost up to 2 4Ps played. You can play a Pyrotechnician, you can play a Miner, and you're still going to get to play all of your target cards with a setup like this. So that can definitely be to your benefit.
It's always based on the situation. If you're playing against Lockdown, a Drive's Caress would be very useful. If you're playing against a heavy control deck, a Miner might be able to boost up one of your engines out of removal range. So it really does give you that strategic flexibility and not feel like I'm going to miss out on my target cards.
I just want to say thank you to Condor for joining us today. Thank you so much, Condor. It was great to have you.
It was my pleasure.
Of course, you can find a link to Condor's team, Team Creve, in the description below. And if you want to catch me, you can catch me on Twitch. I'll have a link to my Twitch channel in the description below as well. And with that, I think we're all done. So thank you guys for joining us today, and be sure to leave the video a like if you found it helpful, and leave a comment below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.